There is a restlessness in the human soul that sleep cannot cure, a hunger beneath the hunger. You may silence it with applause, bury it beneath promotions, or disguise it behind achievements, but at night, when everything quiets, it whispers again, "This isn't it." We have built cities of comfort, towers of progress, but the ache follows us like a shadow we can't outrun. That ache is not a weakness. It is a signal that you are not yet home. Why does the bird instinctively fly south for winter? Why does the compass needle tremble until it finds north? Because what is created remembers where it came from. Even when we forget, the soul remembers. And the soul knows when it is far from its source. So we search. We run to relationships and call it love. We chase careers and call it purpose. We hoard things and call it security. But these are mirrors. They reflect a desire for something more, not the thing itself. You were never designed to find completion in what is incomplete, never meant to find wholeness in fragments. A creature does not define its own purpose. The clay does not instruct the potter. The violin does not compose its own song. Meaning must be received, not invented. You did not make yourself. How then will you know yourself without knowing your maker? We say, "I'll define myself." But identity, when self-authored, is a house of mirrors. Endless reflections, but no truth. You try on roles like costumes until you no longer know who's behind the mask. The soul cannot rest in a self it built on borrowed opinions, because anything built without origin breaks. And so we must return, not as those who failed, but as those who remember. The return is not backward, it's upward. It is not retreat, it is recalibration, a return to the blueprint, to the voice that first spoke us into being. Some fear that returning means losing freedom, but freedom outside of truth is only disguised bondage. You are not free when you are lost. You are just wandering. You are not free when you sever yourself from your roots. You are just drifting. True freedom is found in rightful belonging, and belonging begins when you return to the one who made you. You don't need more to become whole. You need alignment. Wholeness is not about possessing everything. It is about being connected to the right thing. A tree is whole when it is rooted. A star is whole when it is in orbit. A soul is whole when it is near its source. You were not made to chase meaning. You were made to reflect it, and you cannot reflect what you are not near. So draw near, because until you do, until you return, you will succeed and still feel lost. You will love and still feel alone. You will rise and still feel empty. You'll never be whole until you return to the one who made you. You rose higher than they ever expected. You achieved what others only dreamed of. The certificates are framed, the titles respected, the applause is familiar now. But still, something is missing. You walk into full rooms and still feel like something's empty. You smile in photos, but it doesn't always reach the soul. There's a silence inside you that no noise outside you can fill. A space that possessions can decorate but never satisfy. The world claps louder, but your heart whispers softer. This isn't it. You thought the promotion would settle it. You thought marriage would end it. You thought if the bank balance grew, so would your peace. But the numbers changed, the ache didn't. We don't speak of it often because it's hard to explain. You're not broken. You just don't feel whole. You function well, but you don't feel full. You succeed daily, but inside you're still searching. It's not depression. It's not despair. It's deeper than emotion. It's the soul's quiet homesickness. You see, not every emptiness is a problem. Some are invitations. The ache is not the enemy, it's the evidence. Evidence that you were made for more than what you can touch or earn. Evidence that the human soul was built for something it can't build for itself. You can feed the body, you can train the mind, but if the soul is starving, even luxury will feel like famine. Some try to numb it. Distraction becomes the drug. Entertainment, endless scrolling, chasing the next thrill, all in an effort to hush the haunting echo. Is this really all? But hunger ignored only grows stronger, and silence misread becomes dangerous, because the longer you pretend it's not there, the deeper it buries its roots. Others try to replace it. Work becomes worship. Fame becomes family. Pleasure becomes purpose. But replacements don't restore, they just delay the breakdown. We live in a world of masks, where pain is edited out and wholeness is staged for the screen. But filters can't cover the fracture. Likes don't silence loneliness. Followers don't fill voids. Some even make peace with the emptiness. They learn to live with it, but not enjoy. They become high, unctioning hollow beings. Smiling skeletons in tailored suits, polished but parched, yet deep down the soul still remembers what it felt like to be whole, to be aligned, to be known, fully, to belong without performing. That ache isn't a curse, it's a compass, and compasses don't lie. They don't point to feelings, they point to home, and the ache is trying to tell you, you are far from home, not geographically, existentially. You're not lost because you failed. You're lost because you've been searching in places that never held the answer. The soul wasn't made for trophies. It was made for truth, and truth isn't something you build, it's something you return to. The deeper the ache, the closer you are to the turning point, because when success no longer satisfies, the soul begins to seek something sacred. So don't be ashamed of the ache. Don't hide it. Don't rush to fix it. Listen to it, let it speak, because it's not trying to break you, it's trying to bring you back to the place before the noise, back to the origin, back to the one who made you. The ache is the first sign that your soul remembers its maker. And you'll never be whole until you return. When the ache becomes unbearable, we start looking for something, anything that can make the emptiness stop echoing, and we don't always search with wisdom. We search with urgency, we search with wounds, we search with hands wide open but hearts half closed. We chase what culture calls fulfillment, success, status, sensation. We turn to what's trending, not to what's true. We try to bury the void under busyness, fill the silence with sound, mask the hollowness with activity. We think movement means healing, but even a treadmill moves, so we run faster, we run louder. We run harder, but we don't get closer to wholeness, just further from ourselves. We mistake validation for value. If they approve, I must be enough. If they applaud, I must be full. If they want me, I must be whole. But applause fades, and crowds shift, and when they walk away, the ache returns louder than before. We reach for relationships, hoping people will fix what only presence can. We expect love to cure what only truth can. So we burden others with our brokenness and call it romance, but no one can complete you if they didn't create you. They can love you, they can walk with you, but they cannot carry the part of you they were never designed to hold. So we blame them for not filling us when they were never meant to. We keep building identities on things that can be taken away. We build on money until it drops. We build on beauty until it fades. We build on fame until it shifts. And when the foundation crumbles, so do we. You can't build forever on something that was never eternal. You can't draw water from a dry well and expect to live. You can't tape over a leak and call it repaired. We wear titles like armor, hide our fears behind functions. We let our job define us. We let our productivity determine in our worth. But when the meetings end and the office lights go out, the question still echoes, who am I without all of this? And when the answer doesn't come, we reach for more. More clothes, more likes, more screens, more stuff, as if quantity could replace quality. We decorate our prisons and call them palaces. We confuse stimulation with satisfaction. We're constantly entertained, but rarely at peace. The soul doesn't need noise, it needs meaning, and meaning doesn't come from the outside in, it comes from the inside out. But the inside is the part we fear, because that's where the questions live. That's where the ache is, and it's easier to stay distracted than to get honest. We go looking for healing in broken places. We go to the world asking it to fix what it didn't make. We ask created things to answer the Creator's question. It's like putting a key in the wrong door and wondering why it won't turn, like planting seeds in concrete and wondering why nothing grows. We weren't made for half-hearted fixes. We weren't made to settle for synthetic peace. The soul is stubborn. It won't accept substitutes. It will scream beneath the surface until it finds what it was made for. And the longer we search in the wrong places, the more exhausted we become, until even joy feels like labor and rest feels unreachable. The more we chase shadows, the more we fear the light. The more we pretend, the more we forget who we really are. The misplaced search doesn't make us foolish. It makes us human, but staying lost is a choice. The ache was never meant to be filled by what your hands can hold, because you were never just flesh. You were formed with eternity in mind, and if the ache is real, then so is the answer. But the answer won't be found in chasing more. It will only be found in returning home, because wholeness cannot be found where your origin is ignored, and you'll never truly find what you're looking for until you stop searching everywhere else and start searching in the right place, the one who made you. We've searched everywhere else. We've poured ourselves into people, into performance, into possessions, and we still came up empty. But emptiness is not the end. It's the beginning of asking the right question. If nothing fills me, who designed me to be filled? When a phone malfunctions, you don't ask the user, you ask the manufacturer, because the one who made the thing knows why it exists. You didn't appear by accident. You were formed intentionally, carefully, with purpose before you had a name. The mind didn't design itself. The heart didn't program its own rhythm. The soul didn't install its own longings. Longings were placed there like fingerprints from a higher hand. Desire itself is proof that there is something worth desiring. You thirst because water exists. You hunger because food exists. So why do you long for meaning unless it too exists? Purpose is not imagined. It's discovered, and discovery begins with a return to the original mind that made you. You were not made randomly, and you are not incomplete by mistake. Your design was meant to stay connected to the one who authored you. A machine unplugged from its source can still look beautiful. Its lights may flicker for a while. Its buttons might still click, but the power is gone, the function fades, and slowly it stops doing what it was made to do. So have we. We've learned how to look whole while quietly short-circuiting. We've mastered performance while running on fumes, but the ache isn't just emptiness, it's misalignment. It's trying to operate outside your original wiring. You were wired for more than success. You were wired for relationship, for connection, for truth, and for return. Look around. Creation is not silent. Mountains rise in order. Stars align in precision. Every fingerprint is unique, every snowflake different, every heartbeat patterned. Nothing about this world says accident. Everything about it says intention. And if everything around you was designed, why would you think you weren't? Design always implies a designer, and the complexity of your soul is the greatest evidence of a creator's care. You long for justice. Why? Because you were made by a just hand. You crave love. Why? Because you were crafted by love. You want to be seen, known, and understood because you were made by someone who sees, knows, and understands all. Your soul was not built for chaos. It was built to reflect its creator, to bear image, to carry intention. That's why nothing else satisfies, because everything else is too small for something so sacred. You were not made by culture. You were not made by failure. You were not made by accident. So why let those things define you? The design is not flawed, but the disconnection is. The emptiness doesn't mean you're broken, it means you're distant. You can't expect clarity when you've silenced the voice that designed the system. You can't expect peace when you've replaced the architect with your own blueprints. The clay does not question the potter. The painting does not instruct the artist. You don't create meaning, you uncover it. And it starts by asking, who made me? And then asking, why? There is a pattern in everything, and the pattern is pointing not just to how you were made, but who made you. The designer never left. You just stopped listening. The pattern is still here, in your pain, in your questions, even in your search. The search isn't wrong, but it was never meant to be independent. The path was always meant to lead back to the one who designed you in wholeness, with intention and with a place in mind, because only the designer can explain the design, and only the creator can make what he made whole again. If the design points to the designer, then your identity must come from the one who designed you. But when you don't know who made you, you start letting everything else tell you who you are. And the moment you lose your origin, you lose your definition, because anything detached from its source becomes vulnerable to distortion. You begin to wear what the world gives you not because it fits, but because you're too tired to search for what's true. They called you smart, so you built your worth on intelligence. They called you attractive, so you clung to beauty like a lifeline. They called you useful, so you became addicted to productivity. But what happens when the grades drop? When the skin wrinkles? When you're no longer needed? Does your worth collapse too? That's the danger of borrowed identity. It's only as stable as the opinion that gave it to you. When you let people define you, you give them the power to destroy you. When you let failure define you, you start calling yourself by your worst moment. When you let culture define you, your value rises and falls with the trends. That isn't identity, that's insecurity in disguise. You start performing instead of living, striving instead of resting, pretending instead of becoming, and it works for a while, until you hit a wall. And realize you don't know who you are when no one is watching, because if your who is built on what you do, then you'll spend your life terrified of stopping. And if your value is built on being needed, then love will always feel like a transaction. You weren't made to perform for love. You were made to exist in it, to walk in it, to breathe in it, without having to earn it every day. But when you lose connection with your Creator, you lose connection with that kind of love. And you start chasing affirmation to feel like a person again. You attach your identity to positions, to people, to platforms, but none of them were meant to carry it, so they break, and when they do, so do you. That's why anxiety grows when identity is misplaced, because everything you hold for stability keeps shifting beneath your feet. One word from a critic ruins your week. One rejection makes you question your purpose. One failure makes you doubt your existence. That's not just emotional, that's identity trauma. That's what happens when you try to anchor the eternal to the temporary. But identity was never meant to be pieced together like a puzzle. It was meant to be received whole from the one who made you, who saw you before you had titles, before you had mistakes, before you had success, and still called you enough. You are not your job. You are not your reputation. You are not your trauma. You are not your resume. You are not even your gift. You are a design, and every design has a name that only the designer can reveal. You can chase self-discovery for decades, but the true self is not something you invent. It's someone you return to, because you cannot know who you are until you know whose you are. And the longer you delay that return, the more fragile your foundation becomes, the more cracks form beneath the surface, the more your sense of self feels like a mask, not a mirror. But when identity comes from the maker, it cannot be stolen, it cannot be undone by failure, it cannot be inflated by applause or deflated by criticism. It becomes stable, rooted, unshakable, not because you figured yourself out, but because you stopped pretending and started remembering. Remembering that you were made on purpose, named with love, and defined by hands that do not change. Until then, identity will remain fragile, and you will keep searching for yourself in places that never knew you. Because the self, apart from the source, is just an image in the mirror, not a reflection of the truth. And you'll never feel solid until you stand on the name the Maker already gave you. When identity crumbles, the only real cure is return. Not to the past, but to the origin. Not back to the version of you before the pain, but to the one who designed you before the world touched you. But we fear return, because return sounds like failure. Like retreat, like giving up on progress. We think moving forward always means building something new. But sometimes, real progress means turning around and going back to what we should have never left. The world tells us to reinvent ourselves, rebrand, redo, become more, do more, impress more. But what if you don't need a new version of you? What if you need the original one, the one your creator intended? What if healing isn't about upgrading, but about recovering? What if restoration is greater than reinvention? We live in a culture that runs from origin. We replace roots with trends. We abandon legacy for novelty. We call distance independence. We call disconnection freedom. But a branch disconnected from the tree doesn't grow, it dies. It doesn't become more, it becomes dry. It doesn't find freedom, it loses life. You are not weak for going back. You are wise. You are not broken for needing the source. You are built that way. Everything created must remain connected to its creator in order to remain whole. But somewhere along the line, you learned to survive without that connection. You built a life around distraction. You found temporary confidence in performance. You wore identity like costume and forgot the voice that called you by name. So returning feels foreign. It feels like defeat. Because pride tells us you shouldn't need help, ego tells us you can fix yourself, but if you could have healed you, you would have by now. If the ache could be silenced with more effort, it would be gone. But it isn't, because the cure was never in self-repair. It was always in surrender. Return doesn't mean going back to religion. It means going back to reality, back to design, back to truth, back to the unchanging hands that formed you in love. It means letting go of the illusion that you were ever self-made. Letting go of the story you told yourself to survive. You can't keep building identity on foundations that weren't built for you. Eventually, the weight will crack the floor. Eventually, the applause will quiet. Eventually, the mirror will show you a stranger. That's when return begins, not in a dramatic moment, but in quiet honesty, in the still place where you admit, I miss the version of me that had peace. I miss the voice that used to guide me. I miss the sense that I was held, even when I wasn't in control. Return begins with remembering, not just what you lost, but who you were before the noise, before the masks, before the striving. And in that return, you don't become less. You become real again, you become rooted again, you become whole again, you stop faking stability, you stop renting your worth from other people's approval. You stop using hustle as a substitute for healing. The return isn't a step backward, it's a step inward, a step upward, a step home. Restoration doesn't happen by running faster. It happens by kneeling lower, not because you're defeated, but because you're found. You can rebuild, but not on your own. You can recover, but not by escaping. You can be whole, but not until you return. Return is not regression, it's realignment. It's your soul remembering the shape of home. It's your spirit syncing with its source. It's the moment the designer takes back what was always his. And when he does, he doesn't shame you. He doesn't scold you. He restores you, piece by piece, layer by layer, truth by truth, until what was hollow is filled, until what was lost is known, until what was fractured is whole again. And all of it begins when you decide to turn around.